Well, what I'd like to share with you is a little bit of a flavor of how we leverage AI in pharma, especially in commercialization. As you'll see that pharma and AI, it's kind of really booming, and especially in commercialization in the last 3-4 years that I've been part of BMS, it's really taken off. So happy to do that. Before I start, speaking on behalf of myself, I'm not sharing any positions of Bristol Squibb, but if you have any questions, I don't like to speak for too long myself, please raise your hand, ask, challenge. We'll be super happy to make it a little bit more interactive. So, I mean, everything's changing very fast, and so is pharma. I think pharma for a long time had this image of being a little bit of a laggard, very comfortable place, and that is really changing. There are 3 areas, kind of 3 domains where that's happening. The first one is most of the pharma companies are very dependent on what we call blockbuster drugs. So think of blockbuster as a drug that generates over $1 billion a year, right? If you can see the image over there, let's pick up, for instance, Merck, the 25 billion. Yeah, it's half of the company. So imagine, like, you're entirely dependent, or half of your sales on one product, and that is actually going to an end because in those years, these products will actually go off patent, meaning that generics can come, and you're pretty much left with close to 0 sales. Yeah, so that's really a tricky area, tricky times where pharma is, and I think over the next 4 to 5 years, we're talking about roughly 200 billion that will be wiped out of the pharma value chain. Yeah. So that's one. Now, what that means is that the days when every company was built around 2 to 3 drugs is really changing, and there's going to be tons more. The pipeline is really diverse. A lot of focus on specialty drugs, so high value, high unmet need, orphan drugs. Orphan drug is something that really is probably in less than 5 people in 10,000, right? So very niche areas. That's where the industry is really moving. A lot of competition there. Therefore, being first in the market is more critical than ever. I think McKinsey actually estimated that if you can launch 6 months earlier than actually planned, you can generate up to 10% in peak sales, right? So it's really super important to not waste time and get there quickly. Now, what's the role of AI in all this? It's huge, and the expectations are immense for pharma. Morgan Stanley and some other analysts are actually asking that pharma companies in the next 5 years deliver the drugs that are currently out there for 60% of the current cost, and there's going to be 40% more drugs, right? So this is a pretty massive expectation. It's a huge cost reduction. If you think about it now, average drug will probably cost between $2 and $3 billion to be introduced. Yeah, so it's really massive if you think how much you need to shave off of that to stay competitive. Yeah. Now, how does AI and Gen AI actually help us in there? There are several areas. I mean, we don't have to go into too much detail, but I would almost rate them from left to right. In drug discovery, this is already quite amazing what we can achieve. A lot of analysis of genomic data, designing molecules, together with the scientists. It's really something where companies like BMS have made a huge step forward. The other one is clinical trial. So the design and also the execution of clinical trials are really key. Think about patient recruitment. ML are helping us in order to find the sites where you would have the kind of highest potential, and that's really speeding things up. And I would say until recently, the commercialization area where I worked has been a little bit of a laggard, but it's very much picking up in multiple areas. Think about demand forecasting, think about different customer engagement strategies and execution, things like dynamic targeting, that all has made a huge leap forward. Now, what does that mean for an insights function like ours? Well, actually, it really means a lot. And I try to think about it in kind of the 3 core areas where I believe, we as insights and CI professionals can make the biggest difference. There's definitely one. We're the only ones who can do that the best, and that's getting to the deepest level of customer understanding. Yeah. So mining insights is really key. Then enabling learning for better decisions. Again, a little bit of a phrase, but as you'll see later, we're trying to push this very, very hard in order to never keep any results, kind of unchallenged, untouched, and make sure that we close the loop back to the strategy, whether it comes to the brand or even the portfolio. Now, what you see here is just a simplified way of how we operate when it comes to customer engagement. So, as I said, it all starts with brand strategy that reflects your marketing, choices. Then it flows directly into an AI engine, which is then fed by different customer data sets across many domains, field execution, everything we know about the customer and their interactions. Where AI plays a huge role, I don't have it here like very profoundly, but is a content. Yeah? So AI-generated content, whether it's the main content or whether it's derivative content, that's probably the biggest thing right now in pharma. I don't think anyone has cracked it yet, but I think we're getting very close to being able to do all the things on the left, and based on that, actually match the interaction with the right content, whether it's the original content or derivative content that would be Gen AI made or generated. Yeah. Of course, what's really important, and I think that's we as insights folks play the biggest role, is the last part, the test and learn, because none of this actually is smart unless you can feed the strategy and actually course correct if needed. So everything that we do in CI and market insights, whether it's kind of understanding the voice of customer, getting the insights directly from the field, measuring perception of customers, that's all fed in back. And I think it's really important that we do that in a very strategic way, because if we dump everything at our business stakeholders, how it works, right? It's not really a great thing. So one, doing the things, but also doing those things in a very strategic, choiceful way, so that we can directly influence back the brand strategy. And I'll talk a little bit about 2 use cases. I split them in a way that, the first one is how do you deploy AI or Gen AI? There's really 2 things, right? Either you kind of start improving your processes, so kind of make the horses faster while still being a horse, while the other one is really building something completely from scratch. Both have advantages, disadvantages. I always try to use this people, process, technology framework, so really something that I find super important. So let's maybe quickly start with the first one, with the faster horses. I've picked a use case which, I have to be honest, it's still a construction site. It's a work in progress for us. We call it augmented analytics. It's, what it really is. It could look a little bit like that, except we don't wear those goggles anymore. But technically speaking, it's really a way how to democratize data, how to make sure that even stakeholders who are not necessarily tech-savvy can get to their insights quicker. Yeah? So they can query complex data sets and get answers back. I'm sure most of you already tried some of these tools. Tricky piece here is that if you have your ducks and data in order and you're just querying one data set, that's usually quite okay. Yeah? But like the beauty and the power of augmented analytics is if you have that across pretty much all of your knowledge platforms and all of your data sets. I mean, are we there with BMS? Nowhere near, but I think we've made some very good progress. What I'm showing here is area and kind of data domains where we've really managed to create a clear taxonomy and then build a semantic layer on top of that, so that when a user comes to the tool, they can really query with a natural language. Sometimes we even have people like literally speaking into a microphone and asking for cuts and potentially even insights that are coming from there. In the early days, we've obviously tried several platforms, several pilots. So the way forward, in this particular case, we're actually using an agency partner, but working with our internal data engineers to make sure that the semantic layer and the taxonomy is all in order. This is just a small example. I think this is still a query on 1 or 2 data sets in our field execution area. So kind of, I don't know if you can read it, but it was just someone was asking what's the average calls per day per rep by country and by channel. Yeah, so you kind of get that literal out of there instead of writing a SQL query, which would probably take you quite some time. And let's face it, not every business stakeholder can do that. Yeah. The beauty of this is you can use the voice or the natural language, or you can also write the query. But also, once you do the language prompting, you can also download the query, which I find super helpful for someone who then wants to get a little bit more into the weeds of the data. I think we have another example. Show me 5 reps who have done maximum calls from June to November, right? So if you're talking about incentives, then this can actually serve you for kind of incentive rating and compensation. So just a few small examples, but since then we actually moved quite forward. So now we can query several data sets at the same time, and the engine actually provides even small insights and recommendations. So that was augmented analytics. And as I said, this was something that is built on existing data sets. It's really kind of increment by increment as we're building this together with our global colleagues with a lot of market local inputs. The other piece for me, it's really a holy grail of pharma, and that's what we would call the next best action engine. So think about it as something like this. That is really the front end of the engine that a sales organization will see. A lot of things on there, but technically speaking, it's something that helps you plan the interaction with your customers from a channel, content perspective, timing, and pretty much all that we learn about the customer gets fed into that engine back, and the engine learns. Yeah, so this is really the front end. It's not that easy to actually get there, and it's also not that easy to get there and have everybody use it and trust it. Yeah, that's really something that's super challenging. I can talk a bit about that later. But what I wanted to show is that often we get these tools, off the shelf. This wasn't really the case here. We did work with an accelerator, so a company that helped us develop it, but now we actually have a proprietary model that we keep improving. Just to give you a flavor what's really behind, it starts from a very simple marketing funnel. Yeah? We call it an adoption ladder. So we're trying to move the ATP across the different stages of the funnel. And that really then gets translated into features, and the features are rated by importance, and that's already something that the engine can start working with. Yeah? So this is just a relatively simple illustration of how the backend is built. I can show you some more details, which are already kind of coming in. What's on the left are really the features. Ideally, they're all at n=1 level. Yeah? So we're collecting everything at individual ATP level. This depends a little bit country by country. Yeah? Some countries will allow you to have HCP level information, especially the US, China, and others. Europe is a little more tricky, so obviously we need to use different ways of breaking the data down and assigning it to an individual HCP. This is not everything. As part of that, kind of little ecosystem, we've also, I think, locally implemented quite a few, let's say, add-ons to it. So just one example here. What we do is, whenever we have content generated for our HCPs, we actually want to validate the content prior to the engagement. So this is one type of validation which we do through predictive eye tracking. So what you see there is a digital sales aid, or a slide in a digital sales aid that's been validated and improved using this neuroscience approach for better visibility, for really making sure that the areas where you want the gaze to go, it's really happening. Now, that we then measure through the voice of the customer, which is Obviously, it can be a survey, both directly from the HCPs, but also something that we ask the reps. And then we basically learn, because what we can do is to match those HCPs that have been exposed to this IVA, either the original one or the improved one, and then actually see the results in terms of engagement, in terms of knowledge. And then obviously what we do is bring it back to the strategy and make sure that the engine, is adjusted and learns on the go. So I think I'm over with that time. So I hope this was a kind of two examples of how we deploy AI and Gen AI, and open to any questions. Oh, thank you.